This was supposed to be the happiest morning of his life. But a white cop didn't see a young man, he saw a target. One pulled the trigger and a college dream hit the ground. No weapon, no threat, just a letter and blood. But what happens when the wrong father buries a son? But before we continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comments, subscribe and turn on the bell notification, so you won't miss any upcoming stories. There are mornings that begin like any other, the kind that whisper promise, not pain. The kind that trick you into believing the world is fair, that dreams are safe. Frank believed in mornings like that. 18 years old, polite, brilliant, the kind of young man every mother prayed to raise, and every father prayed to protect. He ironed his shirt twice that morning, not because it mattered, but because it did. Today wasn't just another day. Today, he was accepted into the future he'd worked his whole life for. The letter was proof, folded, creased, held tight in his hands like a passport out of struggle. He borrowed his father's old car, the same one that still carried the scent of oil, sweat, and long military nights. His father watched him from the porch, proud, silent, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. Frank didn't know it yet, but that road he took was older than he was. A road paved with stories just like his, men who looked like him, who smiled the same, who didn't make it home. And somewhere between the hum of the engine and the beat of his favorite song, that sound came, the sound that every black parent fears, the siren. He slowed down, rolled the window down, both hands on the wheel. No panic, no aggression. Just the kind of respect he'd been taught could keep him alive. Officer Bruce, white mid-40s, calm, too calm. His hand rested where it always does. On the gun, like a nervous habit that's become muscle memory. Frank greeted him politely, smiled, handed over his license. He even mentioned his acceptance letter, like it might mean something, like it might make him human. But Bruce didn't see a future. He saw a threat, didn't see the letter, only the skin that held it. One sound, one bullet, one decision that tore the morning apart. The letter slipped from his fingers, landing face down in the dust, a crimson stain spreading like an autograph from hell. Bruce stood there, expression empty, not panic, not regret, just inconvenience. He radioed it in with the calmness of a man ordering breakfast. Suspect, that's what they called him. A boy with a dream, branded in death as a danger in life. Within an hour, the story was written. Within a day, the headlines were ready, and by nightfall, the world had already decided who was guilty. No gun, no witness brave enough to speak. Just a folded piece of paper, soaked, torn, and ignored. But across town, a man in uniform folded a flag he once fought under. A man who had seen death, but never like this. A father who taught his son discipline, honor, and restraint, only to watch restraint die first. And when the police came knocking, they didn't bring condolences. They brought a lie. Suspect reached for a weapon. That's what the report said. Except the only thing in Frank's hand was his future. By dawn, the news cycle had moved on. Another story, another face, another name that fades before it's even remembered. But not this time. Not this boy. Because the man they called father was built from something else. He wasn't just a grieving parent. He was a Navy SEAL, a man trained to fight wars, but never expected one to find him a home. They killed the wrong boy, but they chose the wrong father. What happens when a Navy SEAL buries a son and digs up a monster? There are moments after a tragedy when the world doesn't explode, it whispers. And in that whisper, evil hides behind procedure. The scene is quiet now, too quiet. Not because peace is returned, but because power has spoken, and silence is what it demands. Yellow police tape sways gently in the warm breeze. On the other side, Frank's father stands, his boots sinking slightly into the soft soil. His chest doesn't heave, not yet. His hands don't tremble, not yet. The weight of what just happened hasn't landed, it's still falling. Around him, uniforms move in rhythm like a rehearsed play. A play where the ending was decided long before the first act began. Their faces are empty. Their eyes are trained not to feel. A dead black boy is not a tragedy here. It's a checkbox, a line on a report, a statistic waiting to be filed. An officer approaches him, not to console, not to explain, but to instruct. "We had to act fast," he says, as if the killing of an unarmed boy is a reflex, as if pulling a trigger is as natural as breathing. His voice is flat, practiced, stripped of anything human. No one says Frank's name. Not once. Bruce, the man who pulled the trigger, stands a few feet away, pen in hand, filling out his report. It's just paperwork to him, like clocking out after a long shift. The blood on the pavement is not a boy to him. It's an obstacle, a loose end, a problem to be handled. His face doesn't flinch. No guilt, no hesitation. And in that moment, it becomes terrifyingly clear. This isn't his first time. The mother arrives. She doesn't scream. She doesn't faint. She stands behind the tape, clutching the letter Frank had been carrying. Her body folds inward, a grief so heavy it steals her breath. The cameras flash. Reporters speak in polite, sanitized phrases, a tragic misunderstanding. Police acted in self-defense, words designed to smother the truth. At the hospital, no apology waits for her. No justice. Only a coroner with a clipboard and a tag that reduces her son to a number. No gun. No weapon. But that doesn't matter here. The lie has already taken its first breath. Days pass. People keep living. But for Frank's family, time has stopped. His mother resigns from her job, not because she wants to, but because she can't survive the whispers, the sideways glances, the careful, deliberate distance people put between themselves and the truth. Her world becomes smaller, lonelier. Frank's father doesn't talk much now. He walks through a house that used to echo with laughter and finds only shadows. The chair Frank used to sit in at breakfast. The books on his desk. The acceptance letter now folded with a police report that calls him armed. A lie sitting beside a dream. The funeral day arrives. Black umbrellas fill the sky like bruises. Cameras flash, but the microphones aren't here to listen. They're here to feed the story, the official story. A tragedy, but the officer feared for his life. Frank's father doesn't cry. Not because the pain isn't real, but because it's too big to fit through tears. His jaw tightens. His eyes narrow. His silence becomes its own storm. They expect him to break quietly, to disappear into grief, to let the world move on. That's how it always goes. Another name, another lie, another file closed. But something different lives in him. Something old. Something disciplined. Something dangerous. He's not just a grieving father. He's a man who's seen what monsters look like behind polished badges and polite smiles. He's buried brothers in war. He's heard lies in the name of peace. And now, he's staring at the biggest one of all. He doesn't shout at Bruce. He doesn't attack the officers. He simply watches, eyes locked on the man who murdered his boy. He memorizes everything. The way Bruce stands, the way he smirks when he thinks no one is looking, the way the other officers nod at him like he's one of their own. That smirk is a promise, and Frank's father feels it in his bones. This wasn't an accident. It was permission. But here's what Bruce doesn't know. You can shoot a boy. You can file a lie. You can bury the evidence. But when you murder a soldier's son, you don't silence the story. You light a fuse. As the world moves on, pretending to care, pretending to mourn, Frank's father is already shifting. Quietly, strategically. He's not grieving like a victim. He's observing like a hunter. And what no one realizes yet is that the calm after a murder isn't peace. It's just the silence before the storm. Grief has a sound, but suspicion has a silence. A silence that scratches at the walls of your mind when something just doesn't add up. The house is dark now. The funeral flowers are wilting. But Frank's father hasn't slept. He sits alone at the kitchen table, the pale light from a single lamp drawing a circle around him, like a man on an island surrounded by shadows. In front of him, the police report, the one Bruce filed, A document meant to close the case before it ever opens. A script written by a system that knows how to bury the truth before sunrise. He reads the first line once, twice, then again, and the first crack begins to form. The timeline doesn't make sense. The call was logged at 8:15. The shot reported at 8:19. The officer's statement claims a struggle lasted 3 full minutes. But body removal was time-stamped at 8:20. 3 minutes, but for minutes total? A lie disguised as math. There's no mention of the letter. No mention of his son greeting the officer. Just a single line, cold, clipped, rehearsed. Subject reached for weapon. Officer responded. Weapon? What weapon? He flips the page. No firearm recovered. The line stares back at him, naked and contradictory. A story trying to wear 2 faces at once. And beneath that story, something festers. On the back page, he finds something else. Other names. Scrawled into the system like forgotten echoes. Marcus, Jamal, Tyrone. Boys. Black boys. All from the same neighborhood. All marked with the same phrase. Officer responded. Different days. Same language. Same ending. He leans back slowly, eyes narrowing. This isn't just a bad cop covering his tracks. This is a pattern, a blueprint written in blood. Frank's father traces the signatures. The same names appear again and again, and at the bottom of each, Bruce's handwriting. The same pen, the same man, the same smirk that stood over his son's body. But something even darker begins to unfold. None of these cases made the news. No headlines. No protests, no outrage, just silence. A silence too clean, too polished. And in that silence, he hears something louder than words, fear. He starts calling the families, one by one, numbers disconnected, doors unanswered. The few who speak do so in whispers. Their voices tremble. Please don't call again. They've already buried more than their sons. They've buried the truth with them. He asked himself a question no father should ever have to whisper in the dark. How many other boys did Bruce execute with the same lie? And then it hits him like a wave crashing over stone. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. Frank wasn't unlucky. He was chosen, like the others. A chill runs through him, not from the cold, but from the realization that his son's death wasn't a tragedy in isolation. It was an entry in a ledger. He closes the file, but the silence doesn't leave. It grows heavier, more alive. The walls of his house feel smaller now, the darkness closer. It's as if something unseen is breathing in the corners, something that's been watching, waiting, feeding. His training kicks in, the part of him that once served overseas, the part of him that doesn't cry when faced with monsters, it hunts them. He looks again at Bruce's signature, calm, confident, like a man who's killed before and will do it again. And why wouldn't he? The system gave him permission. Somewhere in the city, Bruce sleeps easy. Somewhere, officials rest knowing the story is already written. But tonight, Frank's father has seen the crack. And cracks don't stay small. They split foundations. They bring walls down. He whispers to himself, not a prayer, not a threat, but a promise. I'm going to find the truth. And when a man with nothing left to lose makes that promise, something begins to tremble in the dark. The first crack isn't loud. It doesn't need to be, because it's not the sound that destroys the structure. It's the quiet pressure behind it. And this time, the silence isn't his enemy. It's his weapon. If Bruce has done this before, how many are already in the ground? It starts as a whisper, not the kind that fills rooms, the kind that slips under doors. It's been 4 nights since Frank's father first held a report in his hands. For nights since the cracks began to appear. Now the silence that once smothered him feels different. It's no longer suffocating. It's listening. He sits at the table again. Same lamp, same shadows. But tonight, the air has changed. There's a pulse to it, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. Outside, the neighborhood is quiet. A dog barks once, then falls silent. Tires hiss on wet pavement somewhere down the street. The world thinks it's another night, but the world is wrong. 3 knocks. Not frantic. Not friendly. The kind of knock that belongs to someone who doesn't want to be seen. Frank's father approaches the door with a slow, deliberate step. Training never leaves you. Not the way you breathe. Not the way you scan corners. Not the way your hand hovers just behind the doorknob, calculating everything in a heartbeat. He opens it just wide enough. The porch light doesn't reach the figure. A hooded stranger. No words. Just a small flash drive pressed into his palm like contraband. Then, the stranger turns and melts into night. No name. No warning. Just a whisper. Barely audible. Then silence. He stands there, holding a tiny piece of plastic and metal between his fingers like it's a live grenade. Because maybe it is. Nothing comes uninvited at this hour. Nothing good. The flash drive is cold. Too cold. Like it's been sitting somewhere hidden for too long. He plugs it into the laptop. The screen wakes with a pale glow that spills across the room. His reflection stares back at him in the black glass before the file opens. At first, it's nothing. A stuttering line of pixels. The distorted sound of wind. A faint click of boots on asphalt. Then, the shape of a uniform. Bruce. The badge on his chest reflects light from the street lamp. Same night. Same corner. Same blue car. The dash cam angle is low. The sound is clear. Too clear. Frank's voice calm. Polite. Soft. Asterisk. Good evening, officer. Bruce doesn't answer. His lips curl into something that doesn't belong on a man in uniform. A smirk. The kind a wolf makes before it lunges. His hand moves to the gun before a single word is exchanged. Frank doesn't move. He doesn't reach. He doesn't fight. He just stands there, one hand holding that white envelope like a lifeline. A boy on the edge of beginning, not knowing it's the end. And then Bruce whispers something under his breath. For words. Words no one else was ever supposed to hear. The sound cuts clean to the room, like a blade through paper. The father freezes. He rewinds. Plays it again. Same words. Same smirk. A predator enjoying the hunt. Then the gun is raised. Slowly. Like a man savoring control. Frank takes a half step back. Not because he's guilty, but because he senses what's coming. And then, the shot. A single flash. The white envelope flutters to the ground. The camera doesn't lie. The bullet strikes before the command to drop the weapon is even spoken. The command comes after the shot. He watches Bruce bend down, not to help, not to check for a pulse, but to adjust something on the pavement, a gesture too practiced, too calm. Then Bruce looks straight at the camera lens, not realizing it's recording from another angle, and he smiles. The file jumps. For a second, the timestamp on the screen flashes something strange. Not the official time. An earlier time. A hidden layer. Someone hid this footage. Someone buried it. Someone wanted the world to only see the polished version, the official lie. But this is the ghost and the evidence. Frank's father leans closer, every breath slow and deliberate. He notices the framing. The sound of another set of boots in the background. Someone else was there, watching, silent. He turns the volume up. And beneath the chaos of the shot, beneath the ringing in his ears, he hears a whisper. It's not Bruce alone. There's another voice. Calm, deep, confident, like someone giving permission. The father pauses a frame, enhances the audio. The second voice is coming from the patrol car. That means Bruce wasn't acting rogue. He was following instructions. And in that moment, the room doesn't feel small anymore. It feels like it's collapsing. Because this isn't about a single cop with a gun. It's about a shadow standing just behind the badge. He checks the official footage released to the news. No second voice. No smirk. No whisper. The shot appears justified. Clean. Sanitized. The world saw a villainized boy and a heroic officer. But the truth looks like a smile before a kill. He runs the footage again, this time frame by frame. And something else emerges. The flash of another car parked across the street. No patrol markings. Tinted windows. Someone sitting inside. Watching. Recording. Every frame is a doorway to a bigger room. Every pixel is a thread leading somewhere he's not supposed to follow. That smile, it's not just arrogance. It's certainty. The certainty of a man who knows he's untouchable. The father closes a laptop, sits in silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just hang in the air. It presses down on you. Heavy, real, alive. The flash drive remains plugged in. The tiny red light blinking like a pulse. Like the heart of a secret that's just learned how to breathe. He understands now. Bruce didn't pull the trigger out of fear. He pulled it because he could. Because someone told him he could. Because he'd done it before. He reopens the file and notices something on the corner of the frame. A shadow. A reflection caught on a window pane across the street. A figure wearing a dark coat. No badge. No uniform. Just watching. He doesn't recognize the face. But something about the posture, the way the figure stands, it's the posture of someone who believes they own the night. That's when the father realizes this isn't evidence. This is a confession. He knows better than to trust anything once it's exposed. Men like Bruce don't work alone. And men behind Bruce, they clean up fast. The stranger who delivered this footage didn't just give him a file. They gave him a match. And somewhere behind locked doors, there's a powder keg waiting for a spark. He stares at the paused frame of Bruce's smirk. The faint streetlight glinting off the officer's teeth, like a predator's grin. The kind of grin that says, I'll walk free. And a thought creeps in, uninvited, cold. What kind of system lets a man smile like that after pulling a trigger? His pulse steadies, not because he's calm, but because rage has found its rhythm. He moves into the darkness like a man who's walked through worse. In his years of service, he's seen enemy soldiers, insurgents, mercenaries. But this is something different. This is a war that hides behind paperwork and polished badges. This is evil dressed in procedure. The stranger's whisper echoes in his mind. Watch it alone. Someone inside the machine wants a machine to break. But why give it to him? Why now? Who benefits from exposing Bruce? He doesn't know yet, and that's the most dangerous part. Every mission he ever survived began with a single moment like this. A moment when the fact didn't just shift. They cracked open. And when things crack, things bleed. He makes another copy. Hides it in a hollowed-out Bible on the shelf. It's not paranoia. It's discipline. He opens a second laptop. Runs the footage through old software from his service days. Frame by frame. Audio scrubbed. Shadow enhanced. There's movement in the background no one else would notice. A second patrol unit. Turning off its headlights. A figure steps out. A man in a plain black jacket. Hands in pockets. Observing. That figure doesn't flinch when the gun goes off. He doesn't panic. He expects it. This wasn't a spontaneous shooting. This was a performance. And like every performance, there's a director. He rewinds again. This time, paying attention to the moment just after the shot. Bruce's radio crackles. A voice on the other end says, "It's clear. Proceed. Proceed." No one says proceed to a lone officer at a traffic stop. That's command language. That's a green light from higher up. The father sits still for a long time. Not because he's afraid. Because he's calculating. The battlefield just got bigger. And he's no longer just a grieving parent. He's a soldier standing in enemy territory. The rain starts slow, then harder. It's the kind of rain that makes the world feel smaller. But inside, the room grows colder, sharper. Every drop feels like a ticking clock. He leans back, closes his eyes, and remembers his son's last morning. The smell of pancakes, the nervous smile, the acceptance letter folded like treasure, a future stolen. And now, proof of the theft. Proof that doesn't whisper innocence. It screams it. But proof is a dangerous thing when it lives in the dark. Because monsters don't sleep when the light comes on. They fight to put the light out. And Bruce isn't the monster. He's the hand of the monster. The system is a beast. A message flashes on the screen. No name, just a line. The breath leaves his lungs in one slow exhale. Someone is watching. Someone knows he has the footage. There's no going back now. He deletes his browsing history, turns off Wi-Fi, disconnects the flash drive. Old instincts return like muscle memory. Because this isn't just about what he saw. It's about who knows he saw it. Somewhere out there, the person who buried this file is realizing it's loose. Somewhere, a clock just started ticking. And clocks like that never tick quietly. He goes to the window, peers through the blinds. A black SUV idles 3 houses down. No lights, no movement. He doesn't panic. He counts. 3 breaths, 1 slow step back. He's lived through worse. In his old life, Danger wore uniforms too. Different flag, same hunger. He doesn't need to see faces to know the rules. Evidence like this is a death sentence for someone. The question is, who? This isn't justice. It's theater, and the stage has been rehearsed for years. But now, someone forgot to burn the script. The father isn't just holding evidence. He's holding a fuse. And when fuses burn, they don't wait for permission. He slips the flash drive into his pocket like a loaded weapon, not because it fires bullets, but because it can bring down men who carry them. Bruce doesn't know yet, but his smirk is about to become a headline. The city has buried too many boys in silence. But silence, when cracked, doesn't whisper. It roars. And tonight, the roar has begun. He doesn't know who the stranger is. He doesn't know why they risked everything to bring this file to him. But he knows one thing with absolute clarity. Someone on the inside wants blood, not justice. Blood. That means there are fractures inside the machine. And fractures are how walls collapse. He runs one last check on the footage. The figure in the shadows. The second voice. The black SUV. Threads in a tapestry that was never supposed to be seen. The word proceed echoes in his mind. A single word that turns one killer into many. Bruce's bullet killed his son. But this order, this network, built the gun, loaded it, and gave him permission to fire. And that changes everything. He doesn't pray. He doesn't beg. He doesn't hope. Hope died the day Frank's blood touched the pavement. What's left now is precision. Every operation has a moment when you stop reacting and start hunting. This is that moment. He slides the flash drive into a hidden pocket sewn into the inside of his jacket, a habit from a life most people don't come back from. He turns off a lamp. The room returns to darkness. The laptop glows faintly. Bruce's face still frozen on the screen. A wolf caught mid-snarl. The father whispers, barely audible, but sharp as a blade. What he doesn't know is that as he walks away from the desk, another figure is watching from across the street, through a rain-streaked windshield. A camera lens clicks softly. 1 photo. 2. 3. The hunter is being marked. The game has begun. Why would a cop smile before killing a boy who told him he could get away with it? The footage isn't just evidence. It's a map. And on that map, Bruce isn't the destination. He's the doorway. The night is thick with the kind of silence that doesn't just settle, it waits. The father walks the streets like a ghost, not as a man returning from a funeral, but as a soldier stepping into enemy terrain. It's been days since the flash drive was handed to him. Days since the truth cracked open like bone under pressure. Bruce didn't act alone. He never did. That smirk before the shot was not just cruelty. It was confidence. The confidence of a man who knew the world would bend to protect him. But tonight, that confidence is about to collide with something sharper. A stranger has reached out. Not a politician. Not a reporter. A man who once wore the same badge as Bruce. He said 6 words that cut to the static in the father's head. I know what really happened that day. And now, they're meeting, away from cameras, away from anyone who might be listening. A boarded-up diner on the edge of the city. Once a place for laughter and late-night meals. Now, it's just broken glass and silence. The father steps inside. The floor creaks beneath his boots. Dust floats like the memories of a better time. The booth at the far end flickers under a single yellow light bulb. And there, waiting, is a man whose eyes have seen the same rot from the inside. His uniform is long gone, but the weight of it still clings to him. The kind of man who once believed the system could be fixed from within and paid the price for believing. This man isn't a savior. He's a remnant, a broken piece of something that was never whole. He leans forward, and before a single word is spoken, the father knows this is no coincidence. Bruce's shadow stretches far wider than anyone wants to admit. There's a war beneath the badge. Most will never see it, but this man has. He starts talking. Not loud, not rushed, just steady, like someone peeling back a wound that never healed. He tells the father about late-night briefings that never made it into reports, about evidence that disappeared before sunrise, about victims whose names were never meant to be remembered. They called it cleaning the narrative, an unspoken system of erasing pain before it had the chance to speak. For every shooting, there was a formula. First, control the scene. Then control the story. And if the story didn't fit, bury it. Officers like Bruce weren't just protected. They were rewarded. Promotions, bonuses, the kind of quiet immunity that turns men into predators. The father listens, not blinking. Every detail isn't just information. It's a nail in the coffin of the illusion that justice ever had a fighting chance. The ex-cop's voice drops lower. There's a network, a carefully built fortress of power. It involves supervisors, district attorneys, public relations teams, union reps, and a handful of carefully chosen media contacts. Every time a life is stolen, the machine goes to work. The headlines are written before the crime scene is cleaned. The false reports are printed before the body is cold. The victim is villainized before their parents can speak. The father clenches his fists beneath the table. He's no stranger to war, but this is a battlefield without uniforms. In combat, the enemy fires at you from the front. Here, the enemy shakes your hand, smiles, tells you everything is under control. Control. That word burns through his mind like acid. The ex-cop explains why he's here. He once tried to expose the rot. He gathered files, audio tapes, testimonies, but the system didn't break. It broke him instead. One by one, his friends turned their backs. The same badge that once felt like armor turned into a noose. He was blacklisted, discredited, erased. He lost his badge, his pension. His family walked away, tired of living in fear. The machine didn't need to kill him. It just made him disappear. And still, he never forgot Bruce. Bruce was the one case that kept him awake at night. Because Bruce didn't just commit crimes. Bruce enjoyed them. The smirk wasn't new. It was his signature. He had a history, a pattern. Young black men, routine stops, the same language in every report. He reached for a weapon. The ex-cop leans in and whispers like someone afraid of ghosts. There was never a weapon. Not once. The father's heartbeat hammers like a drum. This isn't just about Frank anymore. This is a graveyard built out of names no one bothered to remember. The ex-cop slides something across the table. A folder, thick and frayed, smelling of mildew and secrets. Inside, photocopies of old reports, surveillance screenshots, memos stamped internal use only, and at the bottom, a list of names. Each name is a story that ended the same way. A light snuffed out, a lie printed, a monster rewarded. But one page stands out, a single file, a case from years ago. The handwriting is rushed, the signature barely legible. The victim was 16, unarmed, killed during a routine stop. The officer's name, Bruce. The father exhales slowly. Frank was never the first. But maybe Bruce never expected a father like this one. This isn't grief anymore. This is preparation. The ex-cop's eyes dart toward the window. Even after years, he still looks over his shoulder. That's what happens when you try to expose a system built to swallow its own sins. He warns the father. This isn't about one man. You're pulling on a wire that connects to everything. The police union, the DA's office, the mayor's people. If you go after Bruce, they'll come after you. They'll dig through your life, your past, your military record. They'll try to make you the villain. But the father isn't afraid of being hunted. He's lived in places where death didn't come with paperwork. He's not looking for protection. He's looking for a target. The ex-cop lays out the structure like a map of rot. Bruce is in the top. He's the blade. Above him are the hands that sharpen the blade, use it, and hide it after every cut. There's a captain who's been signing off on every falsified report. A lawyer who ensures the victims' families never see a courtroom. A PR strategist who spins every killing into a tragedy with justified action. And at the center of it all, a man in a suit who has never worn a badge but controls those who do. The father leans back in silence. For the first time, the enemy has a shape, not one face. Many. A hydra, a beast with 100 hands and 100 mouths. And Bruce? Bruce is just a head that bites. But you can't just cut the head off. You have to burn the body. The ex-cop slides over something else. An address. A warehouse. A place where files are stored off record. Evidence that was supposed to disappear. He says he never dared to go back there. But maybe someone who isn't afraid can. The father tucks the address into his jacket, like a weapon. There's a moment of silence between them. Not the silence of strangers, but of men who understand what war costs. The ex-cop looks tired. Not the kind of tired sleep can fix. The kind that comes from carrying a truth too heavy for too long. He says he's not joining this fight. He's already been burned. But he'll tell the father everything he knows. The names, the schedules, the places where the machine thinks no one is looking. Because maybe, just maybe, someone outside the system can do what he couldn't. The father listens to every word like a soldier memorizing coordinates before a mission. Every name, every location, every weak link becomes part of a mental map. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't question. He just absorbs. There's a cold, surgical focus in his eyes. The same look he had before stepping into combat zones where shadows could kill. Except his battlefield wears badges and smiles to the cameras. Outside, the city breathes like nothing is happening. Cars pass. Street lights flicker. People sleep. But under that thin layer of normalcy, a war is waiting to be waged. The ex-cop finally says the thing that matters most. They protect Bruce because Bruce protects their lie. He kills for free, and they reward him for keeping the world blind. If you go after him, you'll be going after the entire illusion they built. The father stands. His hands are steady. There's no hesitation in his movements. He spent years defending a nation that never imagined it would one day give him a flag folded over a coffin. Now he's about to defend something else. The truth. As he walks out of the diner, the ex-cop calls after him. Not to stop him, but because he knows what comes next. You can't fight the machine, he says. But the father doesn't look back. His voice is low, controlled, dangerous. I wasn't trained to walk away. The door swings shut, and for a moment, the old diner swallows the sound. Outside, the air feels heavier, as if the city itself is holding its breath. This is no longer about grief. It's about power. The father walks down the sidewalk with the folder pressed to his chest. Every page inside is a wound. Every name is a promise. And every lie is about to meet a man who doesn't believe in turning the other cheek. He knows the path ahead won't be clean. The system won't break easily. It's built to survive scandal, outcry, even outrage. But what it doesn't know how to survive is precision. Bruce won't just be exposed. He'll be stripped of the shield that made him untouchable. And the people who protected him will be forced to choose between loyalty to the machine or survival. The father stops under a flickering streetlight. He unfolds the address again. The warehouse. The smell of danger isn't new to him. This time, it smells like justice dressed in gunpowder. But this isn't just a mission. This is personal. And the machine doesn't see him coming yet. Meanwhile, back in the diner, the ex-cop sits alone. He knows what happens next. The moment one man pulls the thread, the machine notices. It moves. It adapts. It attacks. He whispers to himself, God help him. The father disappears into the night, like a storm retreating into the distance. But storms don't retreat. They build strength. And somewhere in an office lit by fluorescent light, Bruce laughs because he still thinks the machine will protect him. He doesn't know it yet, but for the first time in years, the machine is being hunted. The ex-cop's folder isn't just evidence. It's a weapon. and in the hands of a Navy SEAL whose son has been buried under lies. That weapon isn't going to stay in the dark. The city is about to learn something brutal. When you take everything from a soldier, he stops playing by their rules. Bruce thinks he's protected. The machine thinks it's untouchable. But a storm is already moving through the dark, and it's carrying every name they tried to bury. And this time, the story won't end with a lie. Grief doesn't arrive with a warning. It creeps in quietly, and then it sits down like it owns a room. It had been weeks since the shot that ended a boy's future, and with it, shattered the world of a man trained to survive battlefields. But nothing, not sandstorms, not enemy fire, not blood and broken bones, had prepared him for the silence of his son's absence. Frank's room still smelled like morning hope. The window curtains were half open, the kind of careless way young people leave things when they believe tomorrow is guaranteed. His sneakers were by the door, one shoe slightly tilted. His favorite hoodie, the one with a small tear on the left pocket, hung lazily on the chair. And on the table, the acceptance letter still sat like a promise frozen in time. The father, a man whose hands had held rifles steadier than most men hold their breath, ran his fingers across the envelope again. He'd done this 100 times already. But tonight, something felt different. The sound of paper tearing is quiet, but in an empty house, it sounds like thunder. As the flap of the envelope lifted, something slid out, a folded piece of paper. Not official, not typed, handwritten, small, like it had been tucked away with intention. He unfolded it slowly, and there it was, his son's handwriting. Sharp, neat, hopeful. Dad, I'll make you proud. 4 words, just 4, but they hit like a bullet to the chest. Every breath he had held since the shooting cracked open in that single moment. All the nights he forced himself to stay strong, all the hours he wore his soldier's mask, all the times he stood at that grave without blinking, they bled out silently in the room where Frank once dreamed. Frank had written the note on the morning of the shooting, a note meant to celebrate life, not mark the beginning of death. He'd folded it and slipped it inside the letter because he wanted to surprise his dad that night. He wanted to see that smile, that rare, proud smile. But the night never came. And now, the man holding that piece of paper was no longer just a grieving father. He was something else entirely. Something colder, sharper. Until this point, he'd been peeling back layers of lies, step by careful step. But that note, that fragile piece of his son's heartbeat, tore something wide open inside him. Frank had always seen the good in everything. That was his curse and his beauty. He believed in systems that were designed to fail him. He believed the badge meant protection. He believed that kindness could disarm hate. He believed that if you follow the rules, you gotta live. And Bruce proved him wrong in the most brutal way possible. The father stared at the note until the ink blurred behind the burn of his tears. For the first time, the soldier in him and the father in him agreed on something. This was no longer about healing. This was about war. The walls of Frank's room began to shift in his mind. Not physically, but emotionally. What had been a safe space became a crime scene. Not because the shooting happened there, but because everything in that room carried the ghost of a future stolen. The acceptance letter wasn't just paper anymore. It was a gravestone carved in ink. The desk wasn't just furniture. It was the altar of an interrupted dream. And the folded note wasn't just a message. It was a spark. Every soldier knows a spark is enough to light a fire. For days, he had been asking the same question. Why did Bruce smile before pulling the trigger? But now, another question began to grow louder. How do you destroy a system that kills and smiles about it? The truth was, Bruce didn't act alone. The smirk on his face wasn't born in a vacuum. It was nurtured, federal protected. He was a product of something bigger, something colder, something with roots that sank into the soil of the city itself. This was no longer a manhunt. This was a declaration. The father sat down on Frank's bed. For years, this bed had creaked under laughter, under late-night movie marathons, under the weight of dreams too big to contain. Tonight, it creaked under the weight of vengeance. He placed the note against his chest, not gently, firmly, like pressing a warm metal against his heart. He whispered to the empty room, not as a prayer, but as a vow. I will make you proud, too. Grief is strange. It doesn't always make people weep. Sometimes it makes them precise. Every beat of his pulse was now a countdown. Every breath he took was measured, controlled, like the calm before an ambush. Frank's death was a personal wound, but that note turned it into a mission. He'd spent years serving his country. Now he would serve his son. The system had taken a life without blinking. It expected the family to cry, to break, to hold vigils, to fade away quietly into statistics. But it never expected a Navy SEAL to hold the proof of its cruelty in his hand and turn pain into purpose. He began to map everything in his head. Every name, every location, every department, every lie. The note lay on the desk, like a silent commander giving its first order. He remembered Bruce's face, the calm arrogance, the way he stood over Frank like he had the law in his pocket. That smirk wasn't just personal, it was systemic. It was learned. And if something can be learned, it can be unlearned, or burned down. The father leaned over the letter. This wasn't a random act anymore. It was a plan. Bruce was no longer just the man who pulled the trigger. He was the doorway to the beast itself. People think justice is clean. A courtroom, a verdict, a handshake. But justice doesn't live there. Not here. Not in a place where truth is buried under paperwork and silence is bought with checks. Justice in this world is a ghost. You have to hunt it. And tonight, a hunter was born. The note did what evidence, what reports, what body cam footage could not. It reminded him why. Because justice without a why is weak. But vengeance with a why is unstoppable. He opened the old trunk at the bottom of the closet. The same trunk that hadn't been touched since the day he left the military. Inside was everything the soldier had locked away. The uniform, the tactical gear, a reminder of the man he used to be. He had promised his wife he was done with that life, that Frank would never have to see him like that again. But the world had just broken that promise. One by one, he laid the items out on the bed, not like a man preparing for revenge, but like a soldier preparing for a mission with no margin for failure. In that moment, Frank's voice wasn't just ink on paper. It was a battle cry. I'll make you proud. The sentence looped in his head, not gently, like a drumbeat. Every time he whispered it, the fear in his chest shrank and the rage sharpened. There's something dangerous about a man who has nothing left to lose. But there's something far deadlier about a man who has one reason to fight. And Frank had just given him that reason. Outside, the world was still pretending. Pretending the shooting was justified. Pretending the badge made Bruce a hero. Pretending the boy on the pavement was a threat. But behind the walls of that house, a storm was forming. And it didn't make noise. It moved like a shadow. Because revenge doesn't knock on doors. It picks the lock. It doesn't ask permission. It takes what it came for. The system had never prepared for someone like him. They'd buried too many names, counted on too many broken families, counted on silence. But Frank's father wasn't silent anymore. The human mind can carry pain, but it also records everything. He began to replay every second since the shooting. The siren, the headline, the lies, and then the note. That note wasn't just a memory. It was the first domino in a chain the system couldn't stop once it fell. And it had just tipped. From this point forward, he wasn't looking for answers. He was building a reckoning. Frank never got to start college. He never got to unpack his dreams into a dorm room. He never got to wear that acceptance letter, like a badge of hope. But his father would make sure that letter carried weight. Not the weight of grief. The weight of war. The kind that doesn't fade. The kind that leaves marks. Somewhere out there, Bruce was living his ordinary life. Laughing maybe. Drinking maybe. Sleeping easy because the system had wrapped him in protection like a warm blanket. But the clock had already started. And clocks don't ask for permission to strike midnight. He didn't know it yet, but Bruce was no longer a cop with power. He was a man being hunted. The note stayed on the desk as the father walked away. He didn't take it with him. He didn't need to. Because some things you don't carry in your pocket. You carry them in your bones. Frank's handwriting had carved itself into him. Every step he took from that night on would be a step closer to truth and further away from mercy. This wasn't just about Bruce anymore. This was about every silent report, every buried case, every name that disappeared without justice. And the system didn't even know it had already been marked. Frank's voice had woken something it couldn't put back to sleep. The soldier had buried his weapons once. But now, they would be digging something else up. The truth. And when the truth rises from the grave, it doesn't knock softly. People often say revenge changes a man. They're wrong. Revenge doesn't change him. It reveals him. And the man holding that note was no longer hiding behind grief. He was stepping into the light of something far more dangerous. Purpose. A purpose sharper than any bullet, colder than any cell, louder than any lie. Outside, the streetlight flickered. Inside, a vow was made. And somewhere the monster wearing a badge had no idea the ground beneath him was about to break. Frank's voice wasn't gone. It was louder than ever. And now it had a soldier's hands to carry it. The question wasn't if the system would fall. It was when, and who would be standing when it did. Because this isn't the story of a boy who died. This is a story of what his voice set free. And what happens when justice stops asking nicely? Night doesn't just fall. It seeps. It moves like smoke through cracks. Quiet, patient, and merciless. And tonight, the city doesn't know it's sitting on a live wire. Somewhere in its quiet veins, a man is building a storm. For weeks, Frank's father had walked in the shadow of their machine. A machine so polished it convinced itself it was clean. But beneath its gears, it leaked blood. This wasn't a random strike anymore. This was the moment the hunter placed the bait. He begins with silence. Silence is more dangerous than noise. Silence doesn't shout. It waits. The father builds digital ghosts, encrypted packets, forged whispers, fragments of data stitched together into something seductive. A meeting no one announced. A leak that doesn't exist. A location carefully chosen. The kind of bait men like Bruce can't resist. Because predators aren't just violent, they're greedy. And greed is predictable. He leaves a trail of digital breadcrumbs, not obvious, not sloppy. Elegant misdirections. A chat room with no origin. A burner account that reads like a whisper from inside their fortress. A single phrase repeated like a promise. We know what you did. He doesn't need to scream. Men like Bruce don't respond to screams. They respond to fear hidden in a smile. In a windowless room, somewhere in the city's administrative dark, the whisper begins to ripple. The network judges, city officials, union heads, detectives who traded their oaths for favors. They don't speak openly. They never do. They let technology do their cowardice. Encrypted comms, ghost accounts, dead servers. But even the best fortresses have a backdoor. The father learned that years ago, not as a father, but as a soldier. Every step in his trap is layered. Not one trail, but many. Not one truth, but 10 carefully engineered lies, each pointing inward, never out. He isn't storming the castle. He's making the castle open its own gate. And the first to bite is Bruce. Bruce, the man who pulled the trigger with a smirk. The man who thought killing a boy would be forgotten by sunrise. The man who believed the system would always clean up after him. Predators like him, they're always the hungriest. The first encrypted ping goes out at 2:13 a.m. A message meant to feel like a mistake. A drop of poison wrapped in urgency. The second ping follows at 2:19 a.m. This time, it's not a whisper. It's a warning. A meeting. A date. A place. Hidden beneath layers of false credentials. The father doesn't need to know if they trust it. He knows they'll check it. And in checking, they reveal themselves. Surveillance cameras aren't enough for this kind of hunt. He knows they control half of them anyway. So he builds his own. Miniature drones, black as night, no bigger than a sparrow. Parked on rooftops, on power lines, on forgotten corners. No movement escapes their gaze. Every incoming car, every burner phone signal, every face that hides behind tinted glass. He's not watching a meeting. He's dissecting a beast. Meanwhile, inside the system, panic spreads like a fever. The men who thought they were gods are suddenly whispering like sinners. One judge calls another. A detective deletes old files. Someone scrubs a server that was supposed to be clean. But every digital erasure leaves a bruise. And the father knows how to read bruises. He watches them react. Fear always reveals what pride tries to bury. And what they bury is where the trap gets teeth. Bruce demands control. He wants to know who leaked it. He wants to silence them. But the network doesn't trust Bruce anymore. Because beneath his arrogance, there's noise. He's sloppy. And sloppy men bring exposure. The father doesn't need to push. He just lets Bruce do what predators do when cornered. Panic. 3:01 a.m. The abandoned warehouse by the river. Forgotten by the city, but perfect for shadows. That's where the breadcrumbs lead. Rust on the walls. Water dripping like a clock, with no hands. A silence so thick you can hear your heartbeat swallow itself. He chose this place for a reason. Because this is where light dies the slowest. And where secrets echo the loudest. But this isn't just about Bruce. The trap isn't built for one man. It's built for everyone who kept his hands clean while standing in the blood. The handlers. The fixers. The ones who smiled at the funeral while burying the truth. They all walk toward the warehouse, believing they're cleaning up another mess. They don't realize they are the mess. In the distance, a black van slows. Not the kind that carries soldiers. The kind that carries secrets. 3 men step out first, handlers, expensive suits, cheap souls. Their eyes dart, their steps careful. They're not here to protect Bruce. They're here to protect themselves. 2 more follow. Internal affairs, corrupted long ago. They used to investigate people like Bruce. Now they clean his boots. And finally, Bruce. Same swagger. Same cold smirk. But this time, something else lives in his eyes. A flicker. A splinter. Fear. The father watches from above. Invisible. Patient. Not the father who once built swing sets and packed lunches. The soldier who once dismantled foreign networks with silence. He breathes like the night, steady, controlled, deliberate. And below, the web tightens. The warehouse is wired. Every corner, every beam, every forgotten screw. Mics buried in the rust. Fiber-thin cameras in the cracks. Even the wind is a witness tonight. Every word they say isn't just heard. It's recorded. Every lie they whisper isn't just spoken. It's engraved. The handlers gather around a makeshift table. A blueprint of panic spreads across their faces. Bruce leans in, barking orders. The father can't hear the exact words. He doesn't need to. He's not here for their lies. He's here for their cracks. And cracks, they're everywhere. A twitch in the left jaw. A nervous glance at the briefcase. A hand that hovers too long over a gun. Fear speaks louder than words. As the conversation below sharpens, another piece clicks into place. Hidden in their encrypted comms is a virus. Quiet, patient, precise. Not the kind that crashes systems. The kind that bleeds them slowly. Every phone, every laptop, every signal that enters that building is already infected. He doesn't just want their faces tonight. He wants their network, their contacts, their chain of rot. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, servers begin to hum differently. Silent alarms trigger in private channels. Passwords reset themselves. Security layers start to fold in like paper burned from the edges. They'll think they're being hacked. They'll panic. They'll try to shut it down. But they won't find him because he isn't in their system. He's under it. 3:46 a.m. Inside the warehouse, Bruce finally realizes something isn't right. The air feels heavier. The silence feels watched. Predators can smell when the world tilts against them. It's the moment when the hunter realizes he's being hunted. The father doesn't blink. This is the fracture he's been waiting for. The longer Bruce doubts, the more the others reveal. Because loyalty in their world is a currency. And right now, Bruce is expensive. Whispers turn to accusations. Accusations to panic. Panic to chaos. The machine starts to eat itself. The father leans closer to his scope, not a rifle. Not tonight. Information is the weapon, and the target isn't flesh. It's power. Each handler tries to seize control of the situation. They shout into phones. Call people who don't answer. Order cover-ups that won't happen. They've spent their entire lives controlling the narrative. But tonight, they're trapped inside it. The narrative belongs to someone else now. A drone inches forward through the broken skylight, silent as a held breath. It hovers just enough to watch Bruce's smirk fracture like glass. The father sees it, that tiny tremor in his jaw. The same jaw that once smirked over his son's corpse. The same jaw that believed the badge made him untouchable. But nothing is untouchable when a soldier stops grieving. Bruce paces the floor. Handlers whisper. Someone checks the door again. Another scans for bugs they'll never find. Because this trap wasn't built like theirs. This trap isn't sloppy. It's surgical. The father's heartbeat doesn't quicken. His breathing doesn't falter. This is the rhythm he lived in before he ever became a parent. The rhythm of silent wars no one else sees. 4:07 a.m., one of the handlers, the lawyer, finally breaks the silence with a motion that gives everything away. He opens the briefcase. Inside, forged reports, cash payouts, falsified autopsy files, signatures from judges and officials who swore under oath to protect justice. But here they are, proof they protected a murder instead. That's the gold, not the money, not the files, the pattern. The trap isn't about exposure. It's about precision. Rip out the backbone, and the beast collapses. As the lawyer leans forward, the father sends a signal. One click, barely audible, but enough. Every mic goes live. Every drone transmits. Every infected device begins to copy itself into a black server the city will never find. This isn't a recording. This is a noose. Meanwhile, outside, the city sleeps. A world ignorant of the quiet war being written in its underbelly. But that's how real wars happen. Not with armies. With shadows. Back inside, Bruce slams a fist into the table. He doesn't know the trap's closing. But he feels it. And feeling is enough to make men like him reckless. Recklessness is oxygen for a trap. And tonight, the air is thick. The father watches emotionless as Bruce's bravado begins to rot. Men like Bruce think power is noise. But real power is silence. Real power is patience. Real power is watching your enemy choke on their own surtai. The lawyer speaks again. A whisper this time. The kind of whisper that betrays more than it hides. Father reads his lips. A name. Another player in the chain. The network just gave him another artery to cut. It's no longer just Bruce and the men in that room. This network goes deeper, through boardrooms, political dinners, backdoor deals. The same people who send condolences by day, build graves by night. But they've made one mistake. They thought no one would ever make them bleed. The father doesn't just want to expose them. He wants to unravel them, thread by thread, name by name, lie by lie. He wants their empire to collapse, not with a bang, but with a crack they can't stop. 4:33 a.m. The storm inside the warehouse hits its peak. Bruce is shouting. The handlers are arguing. The virus is already climbing through their chain. The trap has teeth now, and they're caught in it. The father lifts his finger from the trigger of the signal pad. The room below doesn't know it, but their conversations have already bled into the world. Every file, every sound, every whisper betrayal. But he doesn't release it yet, because exposure's too easy. He wants fear. He wants them to feel the floor beneath them give way. Outside, the wind shifts. A storm is rolling in. Rain begins to tap against the rusted roof like a ticking clock. The perfect rhythm for an execution without bullets. Bruce finally steps away from the table. He grabs his gun, not because he sees anyone, but because predators lash out when the cage closes. The handlers flinch. For the first time, they don't see a protector. They see the monster they created. The system always eats its children in the end. The father tightens his jaw. This is the moment everything changes. Not because they're guilty, but because they finally feel guilty. Fear is louder than truth. Fear is the real confession. One final piece of the trap slides into place. The father triggers a quiet chain. Streetlights outside the warehouse flicker out, not from power loss, but from control. Phones in their pockets die. The building locks itself in darkness. Their fortress has become a tomb. In that blackness, Bruce's breathing grows louder. The handlers curse. Someone trips over a chair. Another tries to light a phone, but nothing works. That's the thing about men like them. They're powerful under fluorescent light. But in the dark, they're just scared men. The father lets them stew in it. Every second in the dark is a lifetime for guilty men. The brain invents enemies it hasn't met yet. It writes horrors it hasn't seen. It confesses before it's even accused. And then, a voice from nowhere. Not loud, not theatrical, just a whisper through their dead calms. No one is untouchable. That line isn't meant for Bruce. It's meant for everyone in the chain. Because the trap isn't a place. It's a statement. They built their empire on the lie of untouchability. He's here to burn that lie down. The fear in that room isn't just panic. It's the sound of power realizing it can bleed. And once power bleeds, it never heals the same. 4:58 a.m. The rain intensifies. The warehouse hums with terror. And the father, steady, still unseen, knows the match has been struck. He hasn't exposed them yet. He hasn't even broken them yet. But they're already unraveling. They're already confessing without words. Because true traps don't close with force. They close with inevitability. And in this quiet, a storm is born. He doesn't walk away. Not yet. Because this isn't about vengeance. This is about dismantling the spine of something that thought it was immortal. The soldier has built the perfect snare. The father is about to light the fuse. And Bruce has no idea he's already burning. He's not just exposing them. He's about to light a match. And when that fire spreads, the system won't be hunting him. It will be hunting itself. The night smells like rain and gun oil. Somewhere in the city's belly, where the sirens sound different and truth gets strangled before it can breathe, men in uniform gather to erase a crime. But they're not alone tonight. Someone's already here, watching, waiting, listening to every breath. In daylight, Bruce wore the badge like armor. He smiled for the cameras, shook hands, wrote reports that bent reality until lies became official statements. But at night, when the press is gone, when the city sleeps, when no one's supposed to be looking, he becomes what he's always been, a predator shielded by paper and power. He doesn't know that the man he broke is already inside the building, not grieving anymore, not begging for justice, hunting. Frank's father walks through the corridors like he once did foreign war zones, silent, disciplined, unstoppable. His boots don't echo, but the weight of his rage does. In his hand, a small black case. Inside that case, the kind of truth that topples walls. Above him, in the third-floor conference room, Bruce and his handlers lean over piles of shredded paper and wiped hard drives. They believe this is their clean night, their reset button, their purge. They don't know they're standing on a wire that's already been cut. Somewhere, a hidden laptop blinks. A live stream has begun. Every word, every lie, every face in that room. It's no longer private. The entire city can see what they were never meant to. But they don't know that yet. They think they're untouchable. They still believe the badge is a shield. They're about to learn it can also be a spotlight. Bruce sits at the head of the table. His eyes flicker to a photo, Frank's photo. He smirks. To him, this is just one more problem solved. One more story erased before it reaches the light. Around him are 3 men and 1 woman. A lieutenant who falsified the report. An internal affairs officer who shredded the complaint. A judge's liaison who kept the media quiet. And a man in a suit who doesn't wear a badge, but owns the men who do. They speak in half sentences, coded phrases, the language of institutional rot. Report will match the statement. No body cam footage remains. Community already moved on. But beneath their calm, there's a hum of something else. Fear, not of justice, but of exposure. They should be afraid. Because down below, In the maintenance corridor, a former Navy SEAL is sliding a fiber optic cable into the building's main line, and with one silent keystroke, he just turned their cover-up into a broadcast. Upstairs, a television monitor flickers. At first, no one notices. A glitch, they think. Then a second monitor lights up, and a third. Their own faces stare back at them from a feed they didn't authorize. The man in the suit's voice tightens. Who's accessing this room? Bruce shifts in his chair. For the first time tonight, he feels it. Not guilt. Exposure. He reaches for his radio. But in the hallway, radios are already going dark. Someone's cut comms. Frank's father moves like a shadow. He doesn't kick down doors. He opens them like a whisper. His training has always been about entering enemy ground without being seen. Tonight, the enemy wears a uniform. He passes old commendation plaques on the wall. Ceremonies, awards, smiling faces. The kind of smiles that write history books while burying bodies. Frank's face won't be buried like that. Not anymore. Downstairs, darkness, silence, precision. Upstairs, panic, scrambling, whispers turning into raised voices. A lieutenant slams a laptop shut. "Wipe it," he hisses. But the wipe has already failed. The truth isn't in the room anymore. It's out there, in the air, streaming, climbing, spreading. Frank's father climbs the final stairwell. Every step is another heartbeat closer to Bruce. And every heartbeat pounds with the sound of a bullet from that morning. He remembers Frank's laugh, his crooked smile, the way he said, "See you later, Dad." He remembers how the world fell silent after gunshot, how the news headline called his boy a threat. The rage isn't loud. It's surgical. A door clicks open. 5 heads snap toward the sound. Bruce's hand twitches toward the holster, out of instinct, out of fear, out of the same sickness that killed Frank. But this isn't a boy standing in front of him now. This is a soldier who's buried friends in foreign soil and enemies in silence. And he's not here to talk. No one breathes. The tension in the room is so thick, it has its own gravity. Bruce laughs, but it's thin, brittle. "You shouldn't be here," he says. The father doesn't answer. He just places the black case on the table. Click. The latch opens. Inside, a small transmitter. Its light blinking red. The man in the suit goes pale. He understands before the others do. The feed isn't coming in. It's going out. Their cover-up isn't being hidden. It's being broadcast live. Bruce lunges forward, but the father moves faster. A wrist twist. A disarm. Bruce's gun skitters across the floor. The room erupts, not with bullets, but with the kind of chaos that cracks an empire. The lieutenant shouts orders into a dead radio. The IA officer scrambles for the door. The suit tries to shut down the stream. Too late. Outside this building, living rooms, phones, public screens are flickering awake. Citizens are watching the rot they were told didn't exist. And somewhere, someone whispers, "That's him. That's Bruce." A truth this big doesn't just land. It detonates. Other officers flood the building. Some loyal to Bruce. Some who've waited years for this night. Blue against blue. Badge against badge. The walls echo with commands, accusations, fear. The badge is bleeding itself. Frank's father stands between Bruce and the door. Not out of vengeance. Out of something colder, harder. Bruce reaches for the backup piece at his ankle. The father sees it before Bruce even breathes. And for a heartbeat, they lock eyes. The killer and the man he tried to break. The lie and the truth. The hunter and the hunted. Bruce raises a gun. The father steps forward. The world outside holds its breath. Every monitor in the city is on this moment. Every hidden wound this city ever ignored is staring straight at the man who made murder look like procedure. The father doesn't flinch. He doesn't beg. He doesn't even blink. He says one thing. Say his name. Bruce's mouth tightens. No sound. Say it. The father growls. For the first time, Bruce feels something he's never felt before. Not authority. Not control. Insignificance. He pulls the trigger. But the father isn't there anymore. A blur of train movement. The gun flies from Bruce's hand. A punch lands like a hammer. Bruce crashes the floor, choking on the same arrogance that's kept him safe for years. Alarms blare. Boots stomp. Shouts rise. In the hallway, loyalists draw their weapons. Others lower theirs, refusing to stand with him. The machine that protected Bruce for years is fracturing in real time, not from a bullet, from exposure. The lieutenant lunges at the father. A baton arcs through the air. It's caught mid-swing. The father turns a motion back, a calculated, merciless counter. The lieutenant slams against the wall. The IA officer reaches for the laptop. The father crushes a power cable beneath his boot. "No more racing," he growls. The man in the suit tries to slip out, but a young patrol officer blocks the door, badge trembling on his chest, gun in his hand. "Not tonight," he says. Power isn't lost all at once. It cracks. It splinters. It shatters. Bruce tries to crawl toward the door, but the father grabs his collar and forces his face toward the blinking red light of the transmitter. "This is the part you can't rewrite," he whispers. "The world is watching." Bruce spits blood. "You think this changes anything?" he sneers. "We are the law." The father leans closer. "No," he replies. "You were the cover. The law is coming." And in that single moment, the smirk that once followed the gunshot vanishes. Outside, hundreds have gathered around screens. Police scanners leak the chaos. Phones record. Voices rise. Frank's name spreads through the crowd like fire. Not as a headline, as a heartbeat. Back inside, the first gunshot rings out, not from Bruce. From the hallway, blue against blue. A storm tears through the building. Officers fighting over what's left of their corrupted house. Frank's father drags Bruce behind the overturned table as bullets cut the air. He isn't saving Bruce. He's keeping the villain alive so the world can see him fall. He isn't just fighting men tonight. He's fighting a legacy. A system built brick by brick on silence. On lies. On boys like Frank. Every second Bruce stays alive is another second the lie dies. Smoke begins to creep through the hallway. Shattered glass rains from a broken window. The father presses Bruce's face down, the way Bruce pressed his son into a narrative that never existed. "You killed him like he was a threat," the father whispers. "But tonight you're the threat." Sirens approach. Not the kind Bruce controls. Federal units. Media swarms. Whistleblowers. The city is awake now. And the system that once made Bruce untouchable is about to choke on its own secrets. Bruce screams for his loyalists, but many of them have dropped their guns. Some are handcuffing each other. Some are whispering the names of other boys, other nights. And Bruce realizes the most terrifying truth of all. He's not a hero anymore. He's evidence. A spotlight floods the room. Dozens of live drones hover outside the shattered window. Bruce's face is projected across the city he once patrolled like a king. The father stands behind him. No cape, no speech. Just the quiet vengeance of a man who refuses to let his son vanish into a headline. "You thought the badge made you untouchable," he says. "But now it's the only thing people will remember you for." Bruce tries to lunge again, but the patrol officer at the door doesn't hesitate this time. Gun trained, voice steady. "Don't." Bruce looks around the room, the place where he once made darkness look official. Now every corner is filled with light. Cameras, witnesses, judgment, and he finally feels something he's never had to, the weight of consequence. Outside, chants rise. Inside, silence hardens. The father leans closer to Bruce's ear. "This isn't justice yet," he whispers. "This is just the beginning." Bruce's jaw clenches. His empire has collapsed in an hour. But the father isn't finished. He presses Bruce's badge into his hand. Cold, sharp, meaningless now. "Burn with it," he says. In the distance, sirens merge with the roar of a crowd. A city at war with its reflection. A villain exposed, but not yet destroyed. A system cracked, but not yet shattered. The badge burns brightest right before it melts. And somewhere in the shadows, someone else is watching. Someone who gave Bruce the green light in the first place. This isn't over. Bruce thought this was the night he would bury the truth. He never imagined it would be the night the truth buried him. But the father knows monsters like Bruce aren't alone. They come in packs. And somewhere out there, the real puppeteer is smiling. Evil doesn't vanish when exposed. The narrator says coldly, it mutates. It waits. It strikes again. The city wakes not to an alarm, but to the sound of a wound it can no longer hide. Sirens don't scream this morning. They whisper. They tremble. And for the first time in a long time, so does the system that built those sirens. The footage is already burned through the internet, like wildfire through dry timber. Every screen, phones, billboards, courtroom monitors, living rooms, echoes the same image. Bruce's smirk before the trigger. Bruce's eyes after the world saw him. And beneath that image, a truth too heavy to bury. They knew, not just Bruce, not just the men in that room, the entire structure around him. The rot wasn't in the roots. It was in the foundation. This isn't triumph. Not yet. The father stands at the edge of the courthouse steps as journalists swarm like a tide. Their voices are noise. Their microphones are blades. But he doesn't flinch. Behind his stillness isn't peace. It's a war still breathing. Bruce is in handcuffs. The badge that once shielded him now hangs like a curse around his neck. But the air carries no celebration. It's heavier. It smells like something leaking out from behind the walls. Something long hidden. In the distance, families gather. Faces cracked by grief, but lit by something sharper. Recognition. Mothers clutching folded photos. Fathers with eyes carved out of silence. Siblings holding candles that flicker like fragile defiance. They're not here for Bruce. They're here because the story they lived through was buried, and tonight, the earth shifted. One woman steps forward. Her voice doesn't rise. It trembles like something waiting years to be heard. "My son," she whispers. He said the same words Frank did. "Yes, officer." And then he never came home. A ripple moves through the crowd. The lie is no longer isolated. It's exposed as a pattern, a design. Inside the precinct, chaos doesn't wear a uniform. It wears panic. Commander's pace. Lawyers speak in quick, clipped sentences. One name leads to another, and another, and another. Files once locked are now cracks through which sunlight slips in just enough to make the shadows look guilty. This is the moment the machine starts to bleed. Not explode, not collapse. Bleed. Quietly, relentlessly. Whistleblowers, once silent, now step into light, like ghosts finally finding their voices. A clerk from evidence. A patrol officer. A sergeant who couldn't stomach another cover-up. Each one drops a truth, like a grenade into the system's chest. The mayor's office tries to contain it. An isolated incident, they call it. A single bad cop. But the footage keeps looping. The files keep surfacing. The names keep growing. A storm isn't coming. It's already here. The father stands outside the courthouse, his face carved into something between stone and grief. He's not smiling. Justice, if it's coming, moves slower than the bullets that killed his son. And yet, something has shifted. Not in him. In them. For the first time, the system blinks. Reporters shout questions that sound more like accusations. Is Bruce the only one? Who gave the order to erase the footage? How many names are on that list? But the father doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. His silence is louder than their questions. Because the truth now belongs to everyone. Not just him. In the interrogation room, Bruce sits alone. No more arrogance. No smirk. Just the quiet realization that the shield he trusted has cracks. Cracks wide enough to lend the very thing he feared most. Accountability. He stares at the mirrored wall, but this time it doesn't reflect power. It reflects fear. The kind of fear that only comes when a man realizes the walls built to protect him are no longer holding. But here's the dangerous part. A bleeding system isn't a defeated system. A wounded beast is often most dangerous when cornered. Behind closed doors, deals are being whispered, names are being erased, files relocated, power rearranged. Bruce may fall, but those who build him are already moving like snakes through tall grass. The father senses it. He knows this isn't the end. It's a door cracked open just wide enough for the light to slip through, but also wide enough for shadows to fight back. Frank's name echoes through chants outside. Say his name. Frank Williams. The crowd grows. It's no longer just about a boy. It's about every boy who never made it home. Contrast hangs thick in the air. On one side, handcuffs. Headlines. A city pretending to reckon. On the other, a machine quietly recalculating its survival. And between them, one father, standing exactly where his son once dreamed of standing, holding no weapon but the truth and a rage sharpened by grief. Inside the courthouse, a young assistant DA scrolls through documents, evidence she wasn't supposed to see. Patterns line up like dominoes. Internal affairs reports buried. Lawsuits silenced. Cases that should have broken careers. Instead, patted them. She swallows hard. She's young but not blind. And for the first time, she realizes she's working for a system that isn't broken, it was built this way. Bruce's mugshot flashes on every screen. But this isn't the image that matters. It's the reaction. Some cheer, some cry, and some, those who built the machine, start plotting their next move. Because for them, Bruce isn't tragedy. He's a liability. And liabilities are meant to be erased. Outside, the father watches as storm clouds crawl over the city. It's quiet now. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels less like peace and more like something holding its breath. He knows this rhythm. He's heard it in war zones. Victory celebrations before the next ambush. One by one, more families step forward. Stories spill out like blood from a long-ignored wound. A teenage boy stopped on his way to prom. A father arrested on his front porch. A man shot because his wallet looked like a weapon. Each name is a crack. Each story is a hammer. And the wall begins to shake. But the city doesn't collapse. It creaks. It groans. It tries to hold itself together with press conferences, apologies, promises of reform. The father has heard these words before. In other countries, other wars. They sound the same. They mean nothing. A small television plays in a bar across the street. A newscaster says, "Today marks a historic moment of accountability." But the bartender, an old man with tired eyes, whispers to no one in particular, "Accountability isn't justice. Not yet." And he's right. The courthouse doors swing open again. Another whistleblower walks in. This one isn't anonymous. He wears his uniform still. Badge still pinned. Eyes burning with guilt. He says the words no one expected. Bruce wasn't the only one. He wasn't even the worst. The crowd goes silent. In that silence, the city exhales fear. The father listens. His jaw tightens. This isn't over. It's widening. News outlets scramble to keep up. Hashtags ignite. Every new name exposed is another tremor in a structure not built to survive this kind of daylight. But daylight doesn't guarantee victory. It only reveals what was hiding. Behind the scenes, lawyers convene. Old alliances fracture. And in that fracture lies something fragile and dangerous. Opportunity. Because when systems crack, they either crumble or they rebuild themselves into something worse. The father stands at Frank's grave that night. The city is noisy behind him, but here it's quiet. He doesn't talk to the stone. He talks to the silence. "I told you, son. I told you I'd make them see you." But he also knows this isn't justice. Not yet. Bruce in handcuffs is a headline. But headlines fade. Machines adapt. Monsters evolve. The rain begins to fall. Not hard. Just enough to blur the names carved into the gravestones around Frank. And he realizes they're not just names. They're warnings. Every family here once believed the system would protect them. Until it didn't. Downtown, the mayor holds a press conference. Words like reform and task force float through the air like perfume trying to mask decay. But the crowd isn't clapping anymore. They're listening, calculating, remembering. The mayor's smile cracks slightly when someone shouts, "How many Bruces are left?" There's no answer, just silence. And silence is its own confession. The father watches from a distance. This is what a machine looks like when it realizes it's bleeding, but still refuses to fall. It fights back not with bullets this time, but with lawyers, statements, distractions, spin. A more dangerous kind of war. In a small room, a detective who once looked the other way writes a confession. His hand shakes, but the ink holds steady. He knows what will happen if he speaks. But he also knows what will happen if he doesn't. Silence built this monster. Maybe noise can wound it. The father receives a message on his phone. They'll turn on themselves before they turn on the system. He doesn't know who sent it, but he understands it perfectly. Contrast thickens. Bruce, once untouchable, sits behind bars, staring at the floor. The father, once powerless, stands at the center of storm. And the system, once arrogant, now trembles under the weight of its own secrets. But trembling isn't the same as falling. Outside the courthouse, someone has spray-painted 3 words across the wall. Cracks let light in. It's not victory, but it's a beginning. The media cycle shifts. National attention sharpens. Politicians circle. Some smell blood, others smell opportunity. But beneath all of it, the real battle isn't on camera. It's happening in back rooms, sealed offices, hushed conversations where power decides whether to survive or devour itself. The father has no illusions. He's not naive enough to believe the monster dies with one arrest. He's a soldier. Soldiers don't mistake a crack in the wall for the fall of a fortress. But cracks, if pushed hard enough, can spread. The crowd outside grows louder as the sun sets. Candles replace daylight. Chants replace whispers. And for the first time, the silence of fear gives way to the noise of resistance. Reporters approach him again. What does justice look like to you? He answers, finally, quiet, cold, precise. Justice looks like a system that can't kill my son and still go to work the next day. The crowd goes quiet, not because they disagree, but because they finally understand. In Bruce's holding cell, footsteps echo. A guard slides a note under the door. Bruce opens it. No words, just a symbol. A reminder from those still on the outside. They're not protecting him. They're warning him. The machine is already deciding what to sacrifice to save itself. And Bruce is expendable now. The father knows this too. That's why he doesn't celebrate. He strategizes. He meets the ex-cop who once warned him it was bigger than Bruce. The man's voice is low, raw. You think this is justice? This is just the appetizer. The main course hasn't even hit the table. The father nods. He knows war when he sees it. And this is the prelude. New leaks surface overnight. More names. More files. And with each revelation, the wall cracks a little more. But for every crack, a shadow moves to seal it. For every truth revealed, another is buried deeper. This is a tug-of-war between light and darkness, between exposure and control. The father stands on the courthouse steps at dawn. The city looks different in the morning light. Not cleaner, just revealed. And that's when it hits him. Frank's death didn't break the system. It forced it to show its face. That is power, not the kind you hold. The kind you expose. He turns away from the cameras. The battle isn't on the steps. It's beneath them, where roots twist, where the rot lives. Bruce is formally charged. Headlines declare justice begins. But the father doesn't believe in headlines anymore. He believes in pressure. Relentless, unflinching pressure. Because systems don't confess. They crack, and then they fight back. The crowd doesn't disperse. It grows. One name becomes 100. 100 becomes a movement. But movements are fragile things. If not protected, they can be crushed. The father knows this. That's why he doesn't just stand. He plans. The final image of the night. The courthouse wall, still scarred by spray paint. Cracks let light in. The father's silhouette in front of it. Rain dripping from the brim of his hat. The machine bleeds. But it's not dead. And he knows monsters fight hardest when cornered. The system was built to protect Bruce. But what happens when Bruce becomes its greatest weakness is a question that keeps them up at night. Because cracks don't stay small forever. They grow. They spread. And if pushed hard enough, walls fall. Justice doesn't end with handcuffs. It trembles at the edge of something bigger. Because when a monster built a kingdom in plain sight, Cutting off one head never meant the war was over. It only meant the beast had noticed you. The city exhales for the first time in years, but the air tastes like smoke. The courthouse steps are crowded. Reporters with hungry microphones. Families holding photos of sons and daughters whose names were never supposed to be spoken. But tonight, they are. The silence that shielded the guilty is cracked. Not shattered. Cracked. And cracks spread. Somewhere in the corner of that chaos, Frank's father doesn't smile. He doesn't raise his fist. He doesn't speak. He just watches a machine shift its weight, like a wounded predator retreating into the dark. Bruce is in custody. But monsters like Bruce are never alone. He was a weapon, not the hand that pulled the trigger. The headlines say justice served. The city wants to believe it, but the system is breathing. Bleeding, yes, but breathing. A wound doesn't kill a beast like this. It makes it angrier. And when power bleeds, it hunts. For years, the system wrapped Bruce in layers of protection. Lawyers, politicians, silence, and fear. But now it's been forced into the light. And the light is cruel to creatures that built their empire in the dark. Frank's father walks through the crowd like a shadow among shadows. He doesn't hear the chants. He doesn't see the cameras. He feels something colder, the weight of a new war. A war not fought in alleys or under sirens, but in conference rooms, on encrypted networks, behind the polished doors of men who smile like saints and think like executioners. Bruce was the visible face of a hidden skeleton. And when you expose a face, the skeleton tries to bury you next. Inside the precinct, officers whisper. Some are relieved. Some are enraged. Loyalty is cracking in half. Some wore the badge to serve. Others wore to control. And those who wore to control are terrified, not of guilt, but of exposure. When a corrupt empire is cornered, it doesn't surrender. It reorganizes. It recalculates. It reloads. Frank's father knows this. He's seen it before. Not in a courtroom, but on battlefields where enemies retreated not because they were defeated, but because they were regrouping. He's not dealing with a man anymore. He's dealing with an organism, a structure, a living machine that feeds on silence and fear. Bruce's arrest is not the end. It's the trigger. And the people who built the machine, they don't appear in mugshots. They sit on boards. They sign budgets. They approve policies. They write the rules and rewrite them when justice comes too close. Across town, a quiet meeting takes place. No uniforms. No flashing lights. No cameras. Men and women who were never supposed to be part of the story pour expensive liquor into crystal glasses. One leans forward and whispers, "Contain it." Another replies, "He thinks he won." They speak about Frank's father the way a hunter speaks about prey that strayed too close to the trap. To them, he isn't a grieving man. He's a variable, a problem, a threat, and in their world, threats are eliminated. And then the message arrives. No sound, no scream, just a text on a screen. For words, you're next. Watch closely. Fear isn't in the threat. Fear is in the precision. No name, no address, no emoji, just certainty. Someone out there wants him to know. Bruce may be in a cell, but the system is still awake. And awake systems are dangerous. Frank's father doesn't flinch. He's carried heavier threats on foreign soil. But this time, the war is home. And home wars don't end with bullets. They end with legacies. Bruce thought the badge made him invincible. He thought a bullet could erase a dream. He thought fear could silence a father. But now, the story isn't about Bruce anymore. It's about the machine that created him. The one that rewarded him. The one that hid his crimes like dust swept under marble floors. Frank's blood was their secret. Now it's their spotlight. And creatures of the dark burn under light. The machine is cornered, and cornered power doesn't negotiate. It retaliates. Whistleblowers will be targeted. Evidence will vanish. Stories will be rewritten. Witnesses will feel the ground shake beneath their feet. The war for truth isn't a headline. It's a battlefield. And it has only just begun. Outside the courthouse, a mother holds her child's hand tighter. A journalist checks their rear-view mirror twice. A lawyer finds their office broken into. People who dare to speak are learning something painful. Fighting the beast is dangerous not because it's loud, but because it's everywhere. Frank's father steps into that storm willingly, not because he wants vengeance, but because he knows silence is how monsters survive. And he's not here to go silent. He's not a headline. He's not a witness. He's a storm they didn't plan for. The city is watching. Some are hoping for change. Others are praying it all fades away. But evil doesn't fade when ignored. It mutates. It adapts. It finds new faces, new uniforms, new ways to blend into the ordinary. The arrest of Bruce didn't destroy the system. It exposed its shape, and exposure is dangerous, because now everyone can see how big it really is. Late at night, Frank's father walks into Frank's empty room. The acceptance letter is still framed on the wall. The air still smells like the cologne Frank wore the morning he died. For a moment, the soldier disappears, and only the father remains. He whispers to the empty air, "I'll finish this." Not because vengeance will bring Frank back, but because silence would kill him twice. The machine wanted to write the ending. It wanted this story to close with Bruce behind bars and the city moving on. A headline, a speech, a fake promise. But Frank's father has no intention of letting them control the ending. He knows their playbook. He studied their shadows. They underestimated the wrong man. And the moment they sent that message, "You're next," they made a mistake they can't undo. He's not waiting for permission. He's not waiting for hope. Hope doesn't topple systems. Pressure does. Truth does. Fire does. Some wars aren't fought on battlefields. They're fought in courtrooms, on screens, in whispers that spread like wildfire. And once a truth like this escapes, it never goes back in the box. The people who covered Bruce's crimes are watching too. They're counting on the public to forget. They're counting on fatigue. They're counting on time. But time isn't their ally anymore. It belongs to a father who buried a son and found a war instead. This isn't a courtroom drama. This is the anatomy of power under threat. And when power is cornered, it fights dirty. So if you think this story ends here, it doesn't. This isn't the end of the road. It's the edge of a cliff. And below that cliff is everything they tried to bury. Bruce may be in chains, but the hands that built him are still free. And they just declared war. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a badge. Sometimes it signs a paycheck. Sometimes it stands behind a podium and tells you justice has been served. But justice isn't a speech. It's a war you fight long after the cameras are gone. Frank's father knows this. And so do they. Somewhere in the darkness, a phone lights up. A figure reads a name on the screen. Frank's father. A voice whispers, asterisk, "End him quietly," asterisk. And just like that, the next move has been made. The story isn't closing. It's widening. What began with a single bullet and a fallen letter is now unraveling into a war that touches everyone. The courtroom is no longer the battlefield. The city is. And whether people know it or not, they've all been drafted. Bruce thought this story was about him. But the real villains were never in the spotlight. They were behind it, pulling the strings. And now the strings are starting to show. Watch closely. This is a part where the beast shows its true face. And it won't come softly. The message on the phone still glows. "You're next." This isn't the end. This is the beginning of a war.